I know you've talked about this before, might be even in one of our global online meetings, but maybe if you could touch on it briefly, the balance between God's sovereignty and our free will, specifically in two areas. First is the imputed righteousness of Christ and balanced with our working out our salvation. And secondly, regarding God's hardening of people's hearts, like in Romans 9, somebody's asked, will God harden my heart as a believer, even against my will?
Okay.
First was the imputed righteousness of Christ versus our...
I don't get too many thoughts get confused in my mind. Okay, imputed righteousness and
our salvation.
Our salvation. Yes. See, imputed righteousness is that God, if you have confessed your sin, the blood of Christ has not only cleansed you, 1 John 1:7, but Romans 5:9, the blood of Christ has made you righteous. This is an amazing truth. Many people think the blood of Christ has cleansed me. Good. But the blood of Christ, Romans 5:9, has justified me. Justified means made me, not only as if I never sinned in my whole life, but even better than that, made me as if I've been righteous all my life. There's a difference between not sinning and being righteous. Not sinning means I never did anything wrong. Righteous means I did all the right things. That's a greater thing than saying I never did any wrong thing. So the blood of Christ has declared me righteous. It's amazing. As if from the day I was born, I was absolutely righteous. I'm convinced of that because the blood of Christ has made me like that. So I accept that. But the fact remains that in many areas of my life, I am today unlike Christ. And as I walk with the Lord, I discover those areas. It's just like going in school. You go to kindergarten and you don't even know what 2 + 2 is. You don't know that BAT spells bat, but you learn it. But that's not the end of your education. You go to the first grade and you learn something more. And then you learn multiplication and then division. And then you learn other things about physics and chemistry and biology and so many other things about history. Our children go through an education all the way to college and to a PhD sometimes. So our spiritual education is like that. We are born again first, and then we learn more and more and more and more. But I'm accepted in Christ all along, even though I'm imperfect. But I'm not living in deliberate sin. I'm struggling, but I'm falling, but I'm progressing. It's like, when a child who got 100% in mathematics in the kindergarten class, okay, he gets promoted to grade 1. And in grade 1, he's doing, say, multiplication. And he gets some things wrong. You say, hey, you got 100% in math in the kindergarten. How are you not getting it now? Yeah, because in the kindergarten, I was only doing 2 + 2. Now I'm doing 13 multiplied by 8. I haven't learned that. So I'm making a mistake. So it's new areas that I'm slipping up, not the old areas. And then when I go from this grade to the next grade, I say, hey, now I'm learning something else. I'm learning algebra. I never studied algebra before. I know multiplication. So I'm making mistakes. So in every class, a child who was getting 100% in the previous class is now getting 40%. Why was that? Because he's learning something new. So in spiritual progress is also like that. The Bible calls our life on earth an education. In Hebrews chapter 5, it says Jesus is the author of eternal salvation to those who obey him. Jesus himself learned obedience and became perfect. We read in Hebrews 5, verse 8 and 9. So Jesus was tempted, and overcame, and finally graduated completely. In the same way, he asks us to follow him, and he's now the professor in the college, teaching us little by little by little by. But all the time, I'm accepted. I'm not being thrown out of the school. No, that's the meaning. I'm in the school. It means I'm justified, but I'm not yet fully like Christ, and the Lord is progressing me, my education. That's what that means. Now, the second question was?
Related to God's hardening the hearts.
Okay. It says in Romans chapter 9 that the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh. But what does that mean? The way I've understood it is this. Did God love Pharaoh? God so loved the world Was Pharaoh included in that? Was Jesus willing to die if Pharaoh had repented of his sins? Would he have been forgiven? Would Jesus' death on the cross have atoned for Pharaoh's sin if he had? Yes, definitely. There's not a single, not even the greatest terrorist in the world would be forgiven if he repents, because Christ died for all. He died for the sins of the world. But then where is the hardening? It's like this. That depends on the person's own response. And the best example I can use is, think of the sun. The heat of the sun is like the love of God. But you take some butter out of the fridge and it's hard, and you put it out in the sun. What happens to that butter? After a little while, it melts. Now you take some clay with which they make bricks and put it out in the sun. Same sun, it becomes hard. You can say the sun melted the butter, the sun hardened the clay. Whose fault was that? Was that the sun's fault? No. It depends on the response of the material. And that's why it says that Moses' heart was melted and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. It depended on the individual. God is still the same. His love is the same.